Nearly a year ago, I shared a video about how to make your tongue your best friend when singing. And in that year, I have learned a ton more things about how your tongue affects things like intonation, acoustic leverage, vocal freedom, dynamics, vocal color, and even what register you're singing in. A lot of this new info came from speech language pathologist and researcher Kerrie Obert. She presented last year at the Conservatory's Vocal Pedagogy Professional Workshop, and her work brings a lot of clarity to terms that get thrown around by voicey people like me and don't always make sense to singers. Terms like brightness or placement, and an often contested term, twang. You can even go back a couple of years on my channel and hear me talking about my understanding and use of twang at that time. So before I run out ahead of myself, let me tell you what this video is going to help you with. You're going to understand, number one, how to experiment with your tongue's multi-directional movement capabilities. Number two, we're going to review how to address some of the ways the muscles of the tongue can inhibit free, efficient singing and how you can build procedural memory to get it working in a way that supports free expression and vocal sustainability. And number three, we're going to learn how to employ a rather counterintuitive coordination of the tongue that seems like it flies in the face of all the standard vocal direction that we may have heard for years. And hey there, if you're new here, my name's Dan Calloway. I teach music theater, voice, and vocal pedagogy at Boston Conservatory at Berkeley. More than 25 years kicking around on equity stages and more than 15 years helping singers get to work on Broadway, national tours, regionally, and around the world. And I am very glad you're here with me today. Before we jump into the new information I've been working with this year, let's do a little review and address some of the things the tongue likes to do when we sing that can lead to inefficiencies. The muscle cells think they're being helpful, but some of these common tongue issues end up inhibiting vibration, compromising laryngeal freedom, affecting your pitch, and limiting your access to stylistic versatility. So take a look at this cross-section of the tongue. It takes up a lot of room inside the mandible and the oral cavity, as you can see. Now, look at this group of muscles here at the base of the tongue. One muscle at the base, for example, the geniohyoid, arises at your chin and attaches at the hyoid bone, the structure from which your larynx is suspended. Because of its proximity and all of the root tongue muscles' proximity to this location, the cells have no problem believing that they have a role to play when it comes to making vibration. Often the muscles in the root of the tongue like to robustly engage when we sing. It gives them a sense of a job to do, and it's also a natural muscular reaction when we feel emotional energy flowing through, which we will when we sing. I'll give you an example. Imagine you feel the impulse to cry, but you don't want to cry in that moment. What might you engage to keep yourself from letting emotion flow through? If you're anything like me, you may feel the root of your tongue engage in order to stop the energetic flow of emotion. And because we want singing to be a generous flow of emotion, we want to let the musculoskeletal interactions of our entire body support that free stream of communication. And we want to soften any areas that could muffle any of your essence. So looking once more at the image of the tongue, just look at the physiological and physics setup. Air moves through your approximated vocal folds and then they vibrate. Directly above the vibration of your folds, there's your pharynx, a resonant tube directly connected to your larynx. So where would the majority of your resonance take place? Most likely in the zone closest to the vibration source, there in your pharynx. If you just give yourself a little snort, where your uvula flops back, that's your pharynx. So of course you have other resonating chambers, the oral cavity, your mouth, and your nasal cavity, but your pharynx is where the greatest share of acoustic resonance and amplification take place. For this reason, we want to free up a lot of space in the pharynx so that resonance can do its magic. But even this has some major exceptions, as we'll talk about near the end of the video. I'm a big fan of presenting evidence to your own body. So in this instance, if my goal is to let the muscles in the root of the tongue be free and supple, what I'll do is play around with what happens if I do the opposite. So what kinds of sounds happen when I intentionally grip the root tongue muscles? So let's play around and see. So now I'm going to make my root tongue muscles really tight, and I'll notice what happens to the feeling and the sound. I still notice my voice is, I guess, resonant enough. It's just physically uncomfortable. You can hear a change in the sounds. I'm really binding up the root tongue here. And even if I'll release out a little bit, I'll take some of the back tension out. But yeah, you can sort of energetically feel the difference, and it's not something that I want to keep on doing. So there's one example. We just don't want to continue the physical experience and the effort of that. So if I loosen the tongue a little bit, still engaging the root, and I let the tongue mass fall backward a little more, I get some Kermit the Frog feel. So this isn't necessarily uncomfortable, but you can hear there's a good amount of soft tissue obstruction in the way I speak. If you listen to old recordings of Jim Henson talking, you can hear Kermit's voice follow directly out of his own speech patterns. And actually, if you listen closely, Miss Piggie has the same vocal tract shape as Kermit, only she's speaking in mode 2 head voice. Hiya! So what are some other tight tongue scenarios you may hear? Whenever we say a multi-syllabic word at our house, we often employ what we call the nerd voice. We are card-carrying members of the International Society of Nerds, so we know this voice well. You may hear lots of folks interviewed on NPR and PBS who talk like this. I think this comes from perhaps a lot of my emotional energy being shunted to my cerebral regions, and my tongue plays a role in keeping my emotional energy in check, so I can remain in a state of what I'd like to call removed logical analysis. You can also hear some world-famous singers who employ a pretty tight tongue root for stylistic effect. Also, Shakira is pretty famous with... Okay, let's see if I can do it. Let's see if I can do it. All right, Shakira. All right. I'm self-conscious. All right. Baby, when you talk like that, you make a woman go mad. All right, let's try it again. Okay, so, all right. Baby, when you talk like that, you make a woman go mad. My wife's up in the kitchen, so she can hear me doing all these voices. But anyway, yeah. I'm on tonight. My hips don't lie. All right, that's enough Shakira. But other tight tongue people, so like Cher made a career out of a pretty tight tongue. And even if you look at pictures of Cher, her like tongue posture, I'll call it, is very evident in just even how her facial expressions and how the whole makeup happens. So if you think about let me think if you do Cher, like I found someone to take away my heart, to take away my loneliness. I've been feeling since you've been gone. That's basically her shape. In the classical world, internationally renowned soprano Renée Fleming, she's got some tongue root engagement as part of her signature sound. She selects this coordination, I believe, to craft the sound that feels authentic to her. So you hear it especially on her more open vowels like ah and o. I listened to her singing Morgen by Richard Strauss, and you can hear some of that in her production. It sounds kind of like so if I take it out, if I take that tongue engagement out, you can hear the difference. So you can hear the difference between when the root of the tongue has some engagement and how it affects the sound and the shaping of the tract and when it releases out. So again, I think for her, it's just really an aesthetic choice that she's made to craft her voice in that way. And of course, you hear root tongue engagement all over 90s rock. So I think there's even a term for this style of singing. One of my students said it was called yarling. I think that's what they call it. So there's a creator on Instagram that even does a whole meeting with all these 90s voices, and it's really hilarious. But if you take one example, Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam, so he definitely has that. And even if you watch him, it's got a sort of like set jaw sort of feeling going on when he's singing. So, but if you got she lies and says she's in love with him, can't find a better man. So if I took that tongue engagement away and let the body of the tongue soften a little bit, it changes the sound. So with the tongue softer, she lies and says she's in love with him. And then if I put it back, she lies and says she's in love with him. Can't find a better man. Can't find a better man. So just a little adjustment in what's going on in the root of the tongue. So you can explore through imitation or simply move your tongue in all manner of configurations and see what the effects are. With all vocal exploration, approach it as an experiment, like, I wonder what this will do. Even when, and especially when a teacher is giving you a cue, try it out with genuine curiosity. Often we employ a tool so that we can make something we call the right sound. And when we do that, all kinds of old opinions can crowd in and keep us from discovering the value of an exercise or tool. So always look at things with a little bit of, let's see, kind of skepticism. You can take any simple song and play around with tongue neighborhood and do your own discovery of what sounds that produces, and you'll find out a lot. And some things will become immediately clear to you, and then you'll be able to apply this knowledge to all kinds of singing. I mean, even if you take Happy Birthday and move your tongue in all kinds of different places and see what the effects are, that's going to actually give you a lot of insight. If you find you're having a hard time releasing the muscles of the tongue root, I want you to, number one, be patient and compassionate with yourself. Remember, these muscle cells believe they are helping. And when you meet them with curiosity and understanding, it gives them a moment also to perceive what's going to be most acoustically and physiologically beneficial. The body is very intelligent. So if we just present our cells with new information, a lot of times they'll hop on board the new coordination train faster than we could ever explain things to them or berate them into submission, as I know I've tried to do in the past. So with your tongue, go ahead and apply some direct therapeutic massage and movement as you sing. To alleviate any static hold of your muscles, add movement. And sometimes direct massage is a terrific way to provide evidence that their previous work can now relax. I like to hook my index fingers right here on my chin and then gently put my thumbs here at the tongue root, right up toward the hyoid bone. And I like to use the index fingers as a fulcrum so I won't engage with any of these jaw opening muscles. So give yourself a moment to massage this and honor any energy you feel releasing out. Then you can start to make sounds while making sure the tissues here in front of your throat and inside the mandible remain soft. So start with hums. Then you can move on to NG. So you move your thumbs under there as much as you need to encourage those muscles to soften, and then so that's NG. So depending on what your habits have been, these muscles will have varying levels of engagement. If your body's used to them engaging a lot, they may be a little upset that you're asking them to disengage. They've been working hard for a long time, remember, so nobody wants to hear that their hard work might have just been inhibiting the goal for a long time. That's why we need to look at our bodies with compassion curiosity, and understanding. I know it is easier said than done, but it's so worth the commitment to do that. Then after you've played with hums and NGs, you can then move to opening vowels. So so you hear, if this is very soft, often the sounds can get compromised. I'm affecting my tongue from beneath. That's fine. This is all to teach your muscles, your root tongue, that it is not part of phonation or shoring up your vibratory strength. It's giving you evidence and experience of how your folds vibrate within the larynx and how this muscle group affects your tract and the sounds coming through. You can then experiment with text from your songs and see what this information gives you. You'll find out a lot for yourself. Another muscle group that contributes a lot to root tongue engagement is your masseter muscles, your chewing muscles. So your chewing muscles are much stronger than the muscles responsible for opening the jaw. So if they tighten up, the root tongue muscles are going to have to work hard to oppose them. So if you flex your chewing muscles and open your mouth, you'll feel that opposition that I'm talking about. So some very gentle massage here is really helpful. I like to take my knuckles and gently massage these chewing muscles. You can find them by clenching your teeth together, feel the muscles that engage, then soften them and give them some love. So there's also this band right here. It's either your zygomaticus or risorius, I can't remember, but I often feel this one can be kind of tight, especially as it connects here to the upper cheekbones. Like in my soul there. And you can do the same thing here. Massage the masseter muscles. And then NG. And then sing your song while massaging. So you can sing, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday. There you go. So this also gives you great evidence about what muscular uses are necessary / helpful and what are not, so you can make your own choices about how much you want to engage. And then, like I said, you can add movement and do silly things like let your tongue loll out a little bit while you sing. To dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable. Or you can do this silly thing, flopping your tongue out and in. This is courtesy of my friend Nancy Snow Carr, who teaches at San Diego State. So she would always go, and then even sing a phrase doing that. So that just develops independence of function as well. So it's silly, but it teaches you that you can move your tongue while phonating through. And so that's a really good brain coordination just for articulation while vibration moves through in a legato fashion. You can also practice with a side-to-side swish while you sing vowels. So right behind your teeth. So you can go. You might want to gently hold your jaw in place to make sure that you are encouraging independence of function, and so that you're moving the tongue separately from the jaw. And I've shown you in the last video, I believe on the tongue, there was an exercise where you can hold your jaw gently in place while you sing la yaga, la yaga. So that would be like la yaga, la yaga, la yaga, la yaga, la. La yaga, la yaga, la yaga, la yaga, la. Sometimes I do yagada. So really, any consonant that just depends on tongue movement without mouth closing will work for an exercise like that. So that's just to get your tongue and your jaw working independently and interdependently. You're doing anything you can to show yourself how the tongue moves and can operate on its own. Now that you're seeing what happens when you have a good amount of tongue engagement in all kinds of directions and what happens when you release and soften those muscles, I want you to link that up now to how your tongue interacts with sound waves and has a tremendous impact on how you can leverage acoustics. I'd like you to imagine a garden hose with no nozzle attached. You turn on the water at the spigot and you've got a steady stream flowing out. So what do you do if you need to add water pressure or to spray the water farther than just the distance at which it's flowing out of the hose? Most of the time, you can put your thumb over the end of the hose and that will increase the water pressure. Therefore, the water comes out with more strength and distance. So the laws that govern the movement of water in this instance also apply to how vibrating air, which moves in wave patterns just like water, how vibrating air moves through your vocal tract. You can play around with this principle just by sustaining an ah vowel in your speech range. Open the mouth wide and then bring your teeth closer together and notice the acoustic difference. So if I just take an ah where I speak, so notice what happens when the mouth is more closed. You have a cozier space in which sound waves bounce around more times. Therefore, you get a boost in amplification. Bringing the teeth closer together is a general narrowing of the acoustic channel, so you're setting up a kind of bottleneck for the sound waves moving through. This provides an acoustic advantage for middle to lower pitches because just like ripples of water will bounce backward when experiencing a narrowing of the flow channel, sound waves will do the same things. And when waves in the overtone series that are proportional to the fundamental frequency bounce back enough times, they'll join that primary frequency and boost the wave, just like pushing a kid on a swing adds momentum to the motion. All these physical laws apply to any wave behavior. P.S. If you want to take a deep dive into acoustics, I recommend you look at the work of Dr. Kenneth Bozeman. So we see what happens when we make the overall tract shape smaller by closing the mouth more. What happens when we move the tongue into various positions to create strategic acoustic bottlenecks in the vocal tract? This information is at the heart of what I want you to understand and use today, and this came from Kerrie Obert's terrific research. You can search her on YouTube. She has a lot of great interviews where you can learn straight from her talking about her research in these principles. So your tongue can move in multiple directions all at once. Repeat with me. Your tongue can move in multiple directions all at once. What does this look like? If you swallow, notice how the tip of your tongue anchors against your front bottom teeth. While it's doing that, the back of your tongue pushes itself back into the pharynx, which ushers the food or liquid down your esophagus. Notice that a few times. Just keep swallowing, front of the tongue anchoring against your front bottom teeth, and the back of the tongue moves itself back into the pharynx. While you do that, the top of your tongue, the dorsum, is able to move in different directions too. So it can float high up toward your hard or soft palate, and it can also depress itself lower. So I can go ah. So just there, we have three directions at once. The tip of the tongue can rest toward the front bottom teeth. The back of the tongue can nudge its way into the pharynx, and the top of the tongue can float high toward the roof of the mouth. These three directions are crucial to understanding in acoustic and dynamic shaping of your voice. Let's talk first about the tip of your tongue and your front teeth. So for me, this is the home base for all vowels. I-E-O, I-E-O, or I-E-O. On every vowel, the tip of my tongue puddles forward and rests at the front bottom teeth. That's a Mike Ruckles term. I like how he says the tongue puddles forward. This helps me to create a very efficient neighborhood from where my tongue can easily move to create vowel shapes. And even on quickly moving phrases with lots of articulation, my tongue returns to this place for all vowels. So if I went, I am the very model of a modern major general. I've information, vegetable, animal, and mineral. I know the kings of England, and I quote the fights historical from Marathon to Waterloo in order categorical. Or say if it's a tricky phrase in German. So if you take Morgen by Strauss again. Und auf dem Wege, den ich gehen werde, wird uns die Glücklichen Sie wieder einen inmitten dieser sonnenatmenden Erde. Side note, I think German is a terrific tool for all diction, especially for your English. So many unvoiced consonants that teach you to continually move breath energy through your phrases. So be conscious of that, how the tongue can rest here with the apex gently touching your bottom teeth. So simple exercises like 5-note scales on all the vowels can prove this to you. You go ah, e, o, and then alternate your vowels. Ah, e, o, or ah, e, o. You can make up any series, right? And notice how the tip of the tongue never needs to leave this place. This is economy of movement and articulatory efficiency. The second direction of the tongue is it can float upward toward your hard palate. So your tongue can fill much of the oral cavity when you sing. This opens really important real estate in your pharynx, and it can also create one very important bottleneck or thumb on the hose, if you want to think about that analogy, for your acoustic energy. So you can play with the differences here as well and see what the effects are. For example, how does the vowel change when the tongue is high or low? If I go high, as opposed to a lower tongue, and then say if I were to sing a scale with a higher tongue and a lower tongue, so you can experiment with all levels of the tongue position and its relationship to the hard palate. There are different qualities to both coordination, so you can pick depending on what kind of sound you want. If you want some more bright color in your sound, a floatier tongue will give you a little more acoustic boost and higher overtone selection. If you want it a little more open and warm, a lower tongue will often provide that. It depends a lot on different factors. For me, my particular tract shape tends to send my intonation flat if I don't float the tongue high, so I almost always aim in this direction. Even today I was working with a student and we were talking about Tina Turner's voice and that really high tongue that really provides a lot of bright color in that coordination. So if you've got tip of tongue forward toward your front teeth, top of tongue floating high toward the palate, now the piece of this puzzle I only started working with since last summer, the magic of what the back of your tongue can do. So just like the top of your tongue can beneficially narrow the tract at the hard palate, the back of your tongue can also create a helpful narrowing into the pharynx. Kerrie Obert refers to this as anterior-posterior narrowing, the back of the tongue scooting backward into the pharynx, which creates an acoustic boost right in the main resonator. You can practice this with different vowels. A with a more open tube sounds like A, and when I narrow it, A, you hear it take on a sharper quality. A, 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 A. There's more high frequency highlighted in that overall profile when the tongue narrows back. So play with that continuum a little. You can just keep A. You can take it into exercises and play with contrast then. Keep switching it up. You'll start to notice where the back of the tongue is moving and begin to use this as a direct tool of acoustic shaping. The backward direction of the tongue also creates and influences crescendo and diminuendo. When I back my tongue into the pharyngeal space, the narrowing promotes amplification. So that, coupled with a little more airflow, creates crescendo. So and then you'll know how to leverage that in longer sustained notes. So the last phrase of Out There from Hunchback by Alan Menken, for example, I'll have spent, what does he go? I'll have spent one day out there. Yeah, Yeah, so that's my tongue is narrowing back. I'm increasing air a little bit and then releasing into vibrato. So if you know that the narrowing promotes crescendo, then you know that the opposite will promote diminuendo. You want to increase space in the tract to decrease acoustic energy and pressure. So for that, I let my tongue float forward, creating more space in the pharynx, and I raised the soft palate. So if I wanted to diminuendo on a vowel like ah, I'd start off quite narrow and then move back of the tongue away from the pharyngeal wall and decrease airflow, though I'd want to continue a sense of generous flow always. So So diminuendo doesn't mean you withdraw your communicative energy. You're just flowing through a larger space, in my experience. Remembering your tongue can move in all kinds of directions at the same time is a game changer. And knowing that its power to narrow the tract and make it even cozier to create acoustic boost and affect dynamic is hugely useful information. Knowing this, there are all kinds of sounds and coordinations you can play with. Also, you can listen to all kinds of singers and voices and ask, what is the coordination of their tongue doing? And I wonder why their dialect and identity show up that way. It's a really fun and informative way to explore character. When you see a very good impressionist, their tongue configuration is always really interesting to study. So, there you have it. Pay attention to the engagement of your tongue. Ask yourself if it's providing efficiency and sustainability. Is it letting the fullest amount of you through? Use some of those remedies for tension we talked about, and with your new knowledge that the tongue moves in all kinds of directions, get to experimenting. As always, reach out if you have questions. Pop questions in the comments. I do love clarifying things for you when you have questions. And if you missed the first video I made about how to make your tongue your best friend when singing, you can get that right here. It covers a lot of the primary principles and physiology of the tongue and tract. So check that out for more foundational information on this. And most of all, please remember there is only one you, and somebody would love to hear the story only you can sing. Love much. Now go sing.